greet you all. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Arab states. Good evening to our friends in India, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. Good to see you all. Hope you are well. There was a period where there weren't many questions, and I think we have about 14 at the moment.
Ajahn, question 2. Good evening, Ajahn. What should I do when I feel peaceful during and after the meditation? Some teachers advise me that I should think of dukkha, suffering, and the causes of dukkha, but I don't know how to do it because I don't feel any pain or sickness during the peaceful moments of the meditation. Thank you very much.
So the question is, when my mind becomes peaceful in meditation and peaceful afterwards, there is this instruction that we should be becoming mindful of and investigating the dukkha characteristic. But when there's no dukkha apparent, and our course dukkha apparent present, how do I contemplate the dukkha characteristic? So the verse about the noble truth of dukkha is birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, association with the disliked, separation from the liked, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. So even when you're having a peaceful moment, you're having peaceful experience, it's a good time to consider, in the future, it is likely that I will get sick. So it doesn't have to be the dukkha that you have to kind of bear with in the moment. It's becoming aware of it as a characteristic. And it's actually important to do, because in times when we are peaceful and there's no particularly coarse suffering, we can get lazy or we can get heedless of those times. We can forget that we are bound by these same conditions, that challenges are coming. Sickness is going to come. Death is going to come for all of us. So one can contemplate that, and it's like, and it also doesn't have to be just about oneself. So if you don't have any particularly coarse suffering, you can bring to mind a friend who is unwell, a relative who is aging and approaching their death. It's just kind of, the Lord Buddha described these as heavenly messengers, deva dutta, the sick person, the corpse. So it's like we allow consciousness to be informed by the awareness that illness is something that affects all beings. Death is something that's coming to this body, just to be mindful of that. And to be aware as well that my current good fortune could change. It's just that this is really important, that in those moments when things are good, that we remind ourselves of that. This will change. And it doesn't have to be heavy. It's supposed to be sober and gentle. It's not sadistic. You're not abusing yourself by saying, this will change, it's all suffering. No, it's be mindful, be aware. The current peace that you're experiencing is a result of a lot of past merits and current merits manifesting, but it will change. Hopefully you can maintain some peaceful mind states, but there is going to be pain in the body, there is going to be sickness, there is going to be death, and there's going to be changes in society which can be quite painful. So most people a few years ago wouldn't have believed that they'd be forced to stay home for a period of years, and all of that we went through as a culture, as a society, as a race. So things come up, and some people had a good experience of the lockdowns, other people had more painful experiences. It depends. It's all relative, isn't it? But for a lot of people, it's very difficult and isolated time. And a lot of people lost their businesses. A lot of people suffered mental health issues, depression, etc. So, things coming down the pike. I was watching a recent interview with Elon Musk warning us about the dangers of artificial intelligence. So that's an interesting thing that we'll get to see, I guess, in the next few years. What does artificial intelligence do? How does that affect the world? If you want to get serious about it, so the thing about having a peaceful meditation and having peacefulness afterwards is a good time to contemplate painful bodily feelings, because there is some stability in the mind. So this person's saying, I can't see any dukkha, everything's peaceful. So just sit still for another hour. Don't move. And you know what's going to happen? There's going to be some knee pain, there's going to be some back pain, there's going to be some shoulder pain. There it is. Unpleasant feelings. And so yeah, there's ways that we can make the noble truth of unsatisfactoriness evident to the mind, if we want to be courageous. And then if there is the stability to be able to observe painful feelings and try to separate out the awareness from the feeling and rest in that awareness while noticing those feelings of pain, people can develop some very good insight at that time. It's very good practice. And it helps to prepare us for the sickness and the death that is coming. So this person has the time. I think I remember I put these questions in the order of, in interesting order. I read the next one.
Yes. Question 3. Dear Ajahn, in my practice, I can only see everything as dukkha, suffering, both internally and externally. I don't know what to do. I do practice metta, but it only helps temporarily. What should I do?
Yes. So the previous question was, my meditation's peaceful. Afterwards, I feel peaceful. I can't see dukkha. How do I investigate it? The next person is, Ajahn, in my meditation, all I see is dukkha, internally and externally. And when I practice metta, it's only temporary. So, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting just to notice that different spiritual practitioners at different points in their process will have different experiences. And seeing dukkha characteristic externally and internally is actually a good thing. It is a good thing. And that's something that I think spiritual teachers can do, is they can say to you, this is part of the program, nothing's going wrong. This is actually the truth. So what's occurring is the mind is seeing more truthfully reality. And Ajahn and I had that experience myself as a young monk, when I just sense of dukkha, everything's dukkha. I try to make awareness bigger and the dukkha got bigger, and I make the awareness bigger and the dukkha got bigger. It's just, oh God, it's all suffering. And when I'm having that discussion with Ajahn and about it, and he says, well, it's true. It's true, of course. And he says, but sensitivity develops before the equanimity. And it's the patiently enduring with it is what creates the equanimity. And what are the components of equanimity? Well, it's the capacity to separate from it with a part of the mind which is unwavering. So it's like, at first, the mindful awareness doesn't have the integrity or the strength to really hold it in awareness, because the mindfulness is a little bit weak. It feels like I'm suffering, this body's suffering, everything's suffering, but that's normal. Nothing's going wrong, and it's a good sign. But what happens is, when you keep practicing, you don't let up, the mindfulness gets stronger. And it's actually the patiently enduring with painful feelings is a large part of what makes mindfulness stronger. It's actually something, I remember one of the things that Dalai Lama said at one teaching in California that I attended. He says, some people want to experience spiritual benefit, spiritual growth, without experiencing any difficulties or hardship. And he shook his head and he says, this is not possible. It's simply not possible. You have to experience some difficulty and hardship. That's what makes us have to find the mindfulness, the clarity, the integrity of the awareness to be able to separate. When mindfulness gets really good, the awareness is cool and spacious, even when the emotions are difficult and the body has pain. There's a kind of a spacious, cool awareness that can be aware of all of that. And one of the phrases that Ajahn Punnadhammo says is that which knows suffering is not suffering. So it's like you have to kind of placing the center of awareness in the knowing, not in the experience of the dukkha. But whatever it is that is capable of knowing suffering characteristic, resting with that, resting in the awareness that knows it, resting in the awareness that knows it. And as a training, what happens is you become accustomed and skilled at doing that. And I mean, I've trained for periods of time with Luang Por Sumedho as well, and he would say these wonderful phrases, over the morning gruel at Amaravati in the winter. He would say, "Nothing can kill awareness. Awareness can take anything." And that's coming from experience. Like he's meditated on lots of dukkha, and he's like, and he was saying, sometimes when I've had enormous suffering, and this comes up in my mind, if I can't stand this for one more second, and he'd challenge it, he'd go, 1. And it's like, look, you stood it for one more second. No, I can't stand it for one more second. 1, 2. Hey, look, you can stand it. It's just a feeling. It's just a mind state. And it's having that courage to stay in that and find the eye in the storm. He would always talk about. He would talk about the axis mundi, the center of the universe, the eye in the storm. So patiently enduring with it, and the metta practice is important, and because even those few minutes of relief is helpful. And if metta, like this person says, the metta doesn't seem to work because it's only a few minutes, but again, just as the mindfulness gets better, more resilient, more powerful when we patiently endure, if we really, really mean the metta practice, I think a lot of people don't mean this, they don't get this. Breathing in may I be well, breathing out may I be happy. They don't get that you really need to mean it. Like you, with all your heart, you absolutely, wholeheartedly, utterly, sincerely wish yourself well. That's not a wishy-washy experience. That's a powerful experience. When you absolutely, wholeheartedly wish yourself well with utter sincerity, that is quite a beautiful mind state. So it's like, okay, well, you need to really do metta. And because if you become adept at metta, you can do it all throughout the day. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. Aware of the awareness of pain, of unsatisfactoriness, of suffering, and applying goodwill, friendliness, kindness, like bathing that experience with warmth and love. Perfectly possible and very helpful, but we have to really mean it. We have to really try. And then just as your mindfulness gets stronger, your metta gets stronger. But please take heart. It's good to see the First Noble Truth. When Lord Buddha presented them in that way, it was with good reason. When you become mindful of dukkha, the characteristic of dukkha, what happens is you also become mindful of what's causing it. And what's causing it is the grasping. It's the grasping at it as being a self. It's the grasping at it of craving for more. It's the grasping at not wanting it anymore. The inverted craving, aversion, irritation. So you're looking at the experience of suffering. Where's the clinging? Where's the clinging? And that's what we need to let go of, the clinging, the craving, the attachment. So when you look at the experience of suffering, you can ask yourself, where is the attachment? Where is the clinging? Can you let it go? How much can you let it go? Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But when you become aware of the cause of dukkha and you try to abandon it, in moments you can. That's when you're going to experience what Luang Por Nan describes as temporary liberation from suffering, when the mind really lets go of its attachments and you can experience very deep peace. So please keep going. Patiently endure. You're in good company. We've all got lots of suffering. Some people, I know a few people who don't, but most of us do.
Thank you, Prajan. Prajan, question 4. Hi, Ajahn. I know my actions do have an impact on others. Do I therefore contribute to their karma? Thank you.
The question is, understanding that our actions have an effect on others, do we contribute to their karma? So, yes. Particularly if you strongly mean to benefit somebody and you do something to help them, the consequences of that, like, I'll give, for example, the activity of teaching Dhamma to people. Like, I intend to help people. That's my intention. If I'm able to give some information or some suggestions of skillful means and that person really takes that, then if that person develops themselves and becomes a more happy, peaceful person, then my merit, I continue to get some merit from that, actually, because I was a factor in that goodness arising. Similarly, if I'm upset with somebody and I really decide I'm going to give them a piece of my mind, and I think of how I might say it in a particularly hurtful way to get maximum effect. You've hurt my feelings, you've upset me, I'm going to tell you how displeased I am with you and how terrible you are in a way which is really cutting. And if that affects a person's self-esteem deeply, their confidence, and then they start doing unskillful things because they're in a bad space, then yeah, there's going to be some ongoing negative consequences for me. So we have to be careful with our, but karma is difficult to understand because there's positive karmas, negative karmas, neutral karmas. There's karma with intention, karma without intention. But basically, this is why we try to keep the 5 precepts strictly. And this is why we try to cultivate metta and develop clarity so that we don't intentionally harm people and we are responsible with our speech and behavior. So yes, our actions do affect others. And if they affect them in a good way, good karma for us. Affect them in a bad way, it could be bad karma for us. Sometimes you have no intention to harm people. Sometimes they misunderstand something you say. Sometimes they have a unreasonable, kind of a not particularly sane, extreme reaction to something that was quite moderate. That happens as well. But then what's happening then is like you never intended that. That might be that person's particular karma that they have to work with, that they've misinterpreted something or felt a deeper hurt than was kind of warranted. That happens too. So yeah, but we have to try our best, tread lightly, be sensitive to these delicate creatures around us.
Thank you, Prajan. Question 5. Hi, Ajahn. What does meditation do to oneself and to others? Thank you.
What does meditation do to oneself and to others? So let's start with the person who doesn't meditate. The person who doesn't meditate will normally have a mind that is affected quite strongly with craving and aversion, and with a very strong sense of being a self in a world. And so strong sense of being a self in the world with a lot of reactivity. The mind is going to be dark, and the mind is going to be experiencing a lot of pain. Craving for, craving not for, liking that, not liking this. So that's the kind of ordinary state of a worldly being who isn't engaged in spiritual training. Meditation in the Buddhist sense is always taught in conjunction with being generous, and being ethical. So the person is already making some effort to make their mind brighter, not indulge too much stinginess or meanness, actually have some generosity and ethical behavior. So the mind is already brightening. And then in what happens for those who meditate, so what kind of meditation? So in Buddhist meditation, in deliberately cultivating greater mindfulness, what happens is that the mind should get brighter and clearer. So it's like if the analogy is darkness, an ordinary untrained worldly mind is dark. And when it's inflamed by passions, it's kind of red. It's on fire with lust and greed. When it's inflamed with irritation, aversion, hatred, it's kind of black. When it's kind of in a confused state, it's kind of gray, if you're thinking visually. When a person is generous, and when a person is ethical, there's some lightness and some clarity around that person's mind. And then when that person deliberately generates more clarity, then that brightness and that clarity around them increases. And I think we can observe this. We can observe what happens to people whenever you do a week retreat or a 10-day retreat. You come out on that last day and everybody, like light bulbs, everybody's kind of shining. It's even to the ordinary eye, it's quite apparent. And then you can also see when someone's going through a hard time and they fall into a kind of dejected, depressed state, you can kind of see a gray pallor to their skin and a kind of a low energy around them. So yes, meditating consistently on the foundation of generosity and ethical behavior, your mind gets, I know some people who have a divine eye who can actually see this. So they can see how pure your sila is by the color of your aura. So if you think you can go in front of an enlightened being and they're not going to be able to see what you're up to, they see it all in an instant. How much clarity is around you, how much brightness around your mind. And when you're meditating, they can see how much samadhi you have, how much sati you have, how much wisdom you have. Samadhi is bright. If you have samadhi but not very good sati, you have a bright mind which is cloudy. If you have a really good sati but not much samadhi, you have a clear mind. It's clear, it's transparent, but it's not shining out light. If you have samadhi and sati, you have a bright and clear mind. And if you have been making merit and you're accumulating merit, your radiance has an extent to which you are radiant. And so these enlightened masters with the divine eye can see how radiant you are. They can see how much merit you have in an instant. This person has a little bit of merit. This person's vast merit. So, and then of course, if we do have a clear, bright, shining mind, normally, at least probably most beings around us in the human realm will feel glad and at ease in our company, but not everybody. Some people don't like good people. Some people get jealous of people who are more pure than them. Some people resent people for being goody two-shoes, or, you know, not everybody likes virtuous people. And but in general, it's those who keep ethical precepts offering the generosity of fearlessness to other beings. Most people will like that. And, devas as well. The devas draw close to those who are virtuous, mindful, and have metta. And if the mind gets dark and gray and heavy, the devas quite possibly take a step or two back. We want to keep them on our side.
Thank you, Prajan. Ajahn, question 6. Dear Ajahn, thank you for your teaching. When there's a problem in my life, I keep thinking about it in order to solve or overcome it. It is impossible then to feel sukha and go into samadhi, as I'm afraid that this will cover and ignore the problem rather than solving it. Any suggestions on how to practice in such cases, please?
The question is, when there's a problem in this person's life, they can't let go into their meditation. There's a kind of a deep-seated belief that they have to think through and solve the problem. So I don't know about you, but I've often had intuitions and insights after nice meditation sessions about how to deal with a challenge or a problem. It's almost like it kind of bubbles out from a deeper level of the mind, a kind of a intuitive wisdom that isn't, you can't necessarily think your way around every challenge and problem in life. Sometimes you get a kind of an intuitive feeling about how best to deal with it. But if you have that deep habit of obsessive thinking, and that's the belief that one has to obsessively think until they work it out, there are some things that you can do. I would recommend like a good session of exercise first. Go to the pool, swim for 1 kilometer. Sometimes just wearing yourself out a bit. You come and sit on your cushion, you don't have the energy to obsess. It's like, go for a hike, get in your body, and climb a steep hill, then meditate on top of the hill. And you go somewhere where there's a big sky. There's other things that people can do, like chant the Dhammacakka Sutta, the Anattalakkana Sutta, and the fire sermon all in one go. Probably take about 45 minutes up to an hour. Chant suttas in a language that you don't understand loudly, energetically. Chant for an hour. And you'll probably find at the end of that hour, you don't want to think about anything. It's like the mind will be bright from having done it, but it wants to rest now. That's my experience. So you need to kind of engage it skillfully on another task where it has to give its attention and its interest to these words, but it kind of trips up the thinking mind. It stops thinking about that other stuff because it has to attend to the wholesome things. So an energetic chanting practice can be really helpful. So, and then after you experience as much peace as is possible for this person at their level, then it's often the case that you have a better idea about how to deal with the challenge or the problem. So you have to challenge that belief that thinking obsessively will solve problems. Sometimes we think too much, most of us. And we do need to learn to allow the mind to rest. So, yeah. So try a bit of exercise first. Another thing is like first thing in the morning, before the whole world has started kind of permeating in the mind again. It's like go to bed a bit earlier, get up a bit earlier. Don't look at your phone or your tablet. Don't turn on the computer. Just wash your face, brush your teeth, come and sit. Morning time is often naturally more quiet after the mind has rested. So experiment.
Thank you, Ajahn. Question 7, Ajahn. Dear Ajahn, good evening. I've tried to be aware of breathing in and breathing out for a long time. However, I experience difficulty trying to be aware of it. I cannot relax and be mindful during the meditation. Even while chanting, I feel my neck and my head become very tight. After the meditation, I feel unwell, such as tension, mental tiredness, and headache. How should I practice meditation? Thank you very much.
So this person is experiencing tension, headaches while trying to meditate and chant. Probably it's a matter of trying too hard. And it's interesting that when we meditate, it isn't a subtle balance of placing the mind on the mind object and then resting in the awareness that becomes apparent through doing that. And it's a kind of a subtle and gentle effort that's required, but it's also consistent. And I can see why people feel they have to really try, because attention spans of modern people aren't great, and it's difficult to get the mind to be with a meditation object for a long period of time in the beginning. But this sounds pretty extreme, like getting tense shoulders and having headaches after trying to meditate for a long time. So I would actually suggest learning a bit of yoga, like to get in the body and like learn kind of a sense of being present in the body with a less subtle object, like make kind of the whole body the object, and do certain, I'm pretty sure after a half an hour of yoga, if the person really goes and does a yoga session, that's going to squeeze out a whole bunch of tension from your muscles and it's going to get your awareness out of your head and kind of spread out more evenly throughout the body. And then you probably find that after that, the yoga session, it becomes more possible to apply a more subtle energy with a more calm and more relaxed body. So that's probably what is needed, I would think. So.
Thank you. Question 8, dear Ajahn. I have been reading Ajahn Punnadhammo's book on Buddhist cosmology. My question is, can a being in the animal realm be reborn in the Peta, ghost realm, in an animal form, meaning as a Peta that appears as the animal they previously existed as? An example would be a dog Peta. My sincere thanks.
The question is, can an animal be born as a ghost or a hungry ghost? The answer is yes. So just as a human being, if when they're dying are grasping at those last few moments, and if those last few moments are traumatic, it's not uncommon for people to have dreams and visions of the drowned person or the person who was in the car accident, because they got kind of stuck in that state. When consciousness left the body, it had that appearance, and the person is grasping at that. So they take on that appearance. So I remember when Ajahn was telling me the story that they went to an old house in Wales, himself and a couple of other monks, staying at a layperson's cottage. And a cat that had drowned was a ghost in that house. And everybody was having the experience of a wet cat coming and rubbing against their feet. It was an experience that several people had. Well, everybody in the house for that period had this experience of a cold, wet cat rubbing against their ankle. And they'd look down, there was nothing they could see. And then another kind of interesting / horrible example is tigers. Apparently one of the reasons, like when a really big, fully grown Bengal tiger walks through the jungle, even the insects shut up. It has such a kind of a powerful presence and such a scary presence. And I was a monk who has certain abilities was telling me this. He says, a lot of the ghosts of the animals that it killed are around it. So because they died in a traumatic state and they're angry at the tiger. So you got this like cloud of angry animal ghosts walking with the tiger through the jungle. So even the crickets and the birds, everything goes silent. That's one of the ways you know if you're a forest monk practicing in the jungle that there's a tiger, because everything just went silent. So, and then this same monk was telling me he was lighting a candle. This silent thing had happened. The jungle had suddenly gone silent. Okay, light a candle, keep on doing your walking meditation path. And he lit the candle and there's no wind, but the candle went out. And he was like there in the pitch dark with the sense of the tigers around and all the angry ghosts. And Now, I went to this jungle situation. I went to the jungle retreat 7 times. I spent 1.5 years of my life in the jungle. I really wanted to see a tiger because I want to have a tiger story, but I don't have one. But one night, I was kind of lying on the bamboo bed and I was half asleep. And I heard this voice say, "Are you frightened that something is going to jump on you?" And when this voice said this, it jumped on me. So I'm on the bed. "Are you frightened that something is going to jump on you?" And it was a pretty weird experience. And I asked my teacher what was going on. And he said that was a ghost of a tiger. A ghost of a tiger that was being playful, that knew that the monks were scared of tigers, decided to jump on a few of them. Well, he jumped on me anyway. So believe me or not, at least I met a ghost of a tiger. And I did see some excrement. Now, I think I have overprotective guardian angels. I don't think my guardian angels let the tiger come near me as much as I wanted to see it. So, because there was in the jungle area where the monks go on retreat, there's what they call the lower sala, the outer sala, and the inner sala. And on the Uposatha days, we would do the evening meeting at the outer sala, and then we would have to walk back through the jungle to the inner sala. And there's this one particular night, there's this very strong voice said, "Don't go to the inner sala, go down to the lower sala." And so I did that. The only time I did it. And that was the night that one of the monks that was going back from the outer sala to the inner sala, he went down this little gully and this big black panther came and circled him 3 times. And he had the same thing, his candle went out. So he had a candle lantern surrounded by cloth. Shouldn't go out normally, but he's holding it, it goes out. And then he just hears this breathing. And this big, very big cat. And by the way, tigers smell like corpses. I mean, that's what they're digesting, right? So their breath smells like dead animals and wet carpet combination. Anyway, I was so upset. I was like, I wanted to see the tiger. I wanted to see the tiger. Anyway. I think my guardian angel was saying, "Go down the hill, Venerable, not tonight." Yes, animals can become ghosts. So, yeah. So try to let our pets die peacefully, and happy.
Question 9. Hi, Ajahn. I'm thinking to help an overseas friend of mine to set up a business company in Singapore using my name. I know that they will be doing legal business. My only concern is if I will be breaking the 4th precepts, as I don't work in the company, but on paper, I will be the appointed director, etc. By agreeing to him, I hope to be of help to this friend and at the same time be able to have some passive income. What would Ajahn advise? Thank you.
The question is, this person is thinking to nominally be a director of a company to help their friend open a business, but not actually be involved in that business. Is that breaking the precept about not telling the truth? I think it is. I think it is. If you're going to be on paper the director, I think you should have a role in the company. But I have other concerns when I read this. So even because I'm becoming a senior monk and I have many students and people come and visit monks and they tell me about their suffering, I've just heard so many stories of someone, a business partner who I thought was a friend, ... Someone who I really thought I could trust, ... So the thing about being a director of a company is you are going to be legally liable for all sorts of things. So if you're not there to really see what this person is doing in your name, partly in your name, I wouldn't go near it. There's all sorts of stuff, public liability stuff, and all sorts of bylaws and endless regulations. even this person might unwittingly break some rules, not intending to. And if they get in trouble, the director is going to have to share some of that responsibility. So I would not, unless I was actually keeping a close eye on what they were doing, I would not allow my name to be used in any business undertaking. So, as much as it's nice to trust our friends, you also have to have a healthy self-care and a healthy amount of suspicion.